All right, so we are now moving on to Assyrian Chaldeans Persian notes, part 3, and talking about the Persians. So, little background, the Persians are the descendants, which you'll remember from the Phoenicians and Hebrews unit. Descendants means like ancestors of a group in Central Asia that was known as the Aryans. About 4,000 years ago, around 2000 BCE, the Persians separated from the Aryans and settled in an area between the Persian Gulf and the Caspian Sea that is today Iran. So let's go to our map. Oh, we need to zoom in on here so you can get a good look here. So here's the Persian Gulf, named obviously for ancient Persia, because Iran is the country today that is ancient Persia. And then here is the Caspian Sea. So this is where Persia begins. All right. Today, products and food are a lot of times still referred to as Persian instead of Iranian. And I'm going to give you some examples, like rugs. There's a style of rug, and when I show you, some of you are going to be like, oh, yeah. Some of you might even be like, I have that style rug in my house. So these are examples of Persian rugs. So you can see a pretty distinct style, still popular today. They're referred to as Persian rugs. They're not really referred to as Iranian rugs. So Persian is still an adjective used to describe Iran. Another thing, some of you might have been looking at this tab like, what is going on here? Persian cats! Like these. Oh my gosh, look at that one. That one's given a look like no other. These are Persian cats. Look at that one. That one looks angry. So, yeah, there's a lot going on there. So, cats, Persian. Look at that. All right, so the Persians lived peacefully for over 1,000 years, and a lot of Persians start off as farmers. Now, as farmers, they depended on streams from the mountains for water, and they dug basins, just like the Egyptians did, to store the water, and they grew things like wheat and barley. So, around 600 BCE, the Persians were conquered by a group of people called the Medes. Now, not the Mets, not my favorite baseball team. As you know, those of you that are baseball fans, the Mets don't conquer anything. The Meds are an ancient group of people. And the rebellion against the Meds is led by this guy named Cyrus. So Cyrus leads the rebellion, defeats the Meds, becomes the first king of Persia. And some history books actually refer to Cyrus as the Great because he was beloved by the Persian people for he's kind of started the Persian Empire. So he organizes an army to be really strong and conquer new land. And boy, did they conquer a lot of land. And you'll see the map in a little bit. Now, the Persian army has something really interesting. They had an elite fighting force that is given a special nickname, the Immortals. So if you were a really good soldier, it's like their special forces today. So today, like, in the military, you might hear special forces like Navy SEALs, Green Rangers, all kinds of stuff. So in ancient times, the Persians have this special fighting force called the Immortals. And the reason they're given that nickname is there were so many Persian special forces, their numbers never fell below 10,000. So it would be basically like you're not really killing them, because when any immortal soldier died, new ones were called up to the special forces group. So let's say you're fighting the Persians and you have 20,000 troops and they have 20,000 troops. And each side loses 15,000 troops in the battle, right? So you would think the next day, well, it's not going to be a day that many people dies. You would think then it would be 5,000 versus 5,000. Oh no, the Persians have this reserve system. So you would have 5,000. The Persians would go up to 10,000 or 15,000 or 20,000. So it's like you're not defeating them. It's like you're not killing them because they have so many backups, which is where this term immortals come from, because it's like they're not dying, even though obviously they are. So the Persians eventually controlled the land from Egypt to India. So let me show you what that is. So from Egypt to India, all of this. And you ready to see it on the map? There's going to be a big orange blob of an empire. There it is. So you can see how much of the ancient world the Persians end up controlling. So they got all of Mesopotamia, all of Phoenicians and Hebrews, all of Egypt, a little bit even in North Africa. They got all of what is today Turkey. They even got a little bit of Europe right over here. And then we're going into what is today Afghanistan and Pakistan, and then parts of India, all under the Persian control. So just to show you on a regular map, it's like from here to here. And if you're wondering, like, why didn't anyone ever here? Like, why not here? This is a massive desert. Like, there's no point. Like, why would you control it? It's just massive desert. So, they're kind to the people they conquered. For example, I've been saying this when we learned about the Hebrews. The Chaldeans forced the Hebrews to go to Babylon. It is Cyrus, the Persian king, when the Persians take over Mesopotamia, and they also obviously take over the land of Canaan, they say to the Hebrews, we control your old land, so go back there if that's what you want to. It's still part of the empire. They let the conquered people keep their own language, their own religion, and practice their own laws, because the Persians believed the people would listen to them if they treated them fairly, as opposed to using fear or force. So they're like the opposite of the Assyrians in terms of ruling philosophy. If you were a city that was conquered, you paid your taxes to the Persians, and the Persians basically said, okay, we're in charge of you. You need to pay taxes to us, but your own culture and religion, like, you can keep. Now, there's a reason for that you're going to learn later on, as to why the Persians are like this. Now, the strongest Persian king actually comes a couple kings after Cyrus, and his name, it looks like Darius. Darius is how you would say it, like the Americanized version of the name, but in ancient times, you actually pronounce this name Darius. So, Darius is the strongest Persian king. He does a lot of the conquering that turns the Persian Empire into this big old slab of orange that you see on the map there, or green if you look at one of these other maps and things like that. So what Darius says is he wants to build a monument to honor his military victories. So he hired artisans to make this huge palace fortress treasury in the capital city of the Persians that is called Persepolis. Now, just as a side note, when we do ancient Greece, you're going to learn that this word polis means city-state. So Persepolis basically translates to mean city-state of Persia. So Persepolis has buildings with stone platforms, and in these gateways were carved figures showing Persian soldiers to be half man, half beast. So that would be like today, if you've ever seen the memorials that we have to war in Washington, D.C., like the Vietnam Memorial and the World War II Memorial and the Korean War Memorial and things like that. We do it to honor the soldiers that have died. Can you imagine in the United States if to honor, well, let's say this. How about it this way? Imagine if the United States built a memorial to honor the folks that died during the coronavirus. But to, visualize it instead of just like, somber, like names of the victims and things like that. Imagine if they had like soldiers or like doctors or nurses that are like half man or half woman and half beast defeating the virus. It'd be like, some of you might be like, looks and sounds pretty cool. Well, the reason why Darius is doing that is for intimidation. He wanted the visitors to Persepolis to basically be like, I'm not messing with the Persians because their army is pretty intense. Now, the king of the Persians had lots of government officials who worked for him because the empire is so big. And all of those officials spoke a language called Aramaic, which is a Middle Eastern merchant language. And by speaking Aramaic, they were able to communicate all throughout the different parts of the Persian Empire. There were about 20 provinces in the Persian Empire. Each has a governor, a secretary, and a general. And these are the people that collected taxes. Now, taxes could be like product like gold, silver, wheat, spices, or animals like sheep or horses. Now, it was also a government official's job in the provinces to stop fights and keep the provinces safe. They also reported separately to the king. This way, if there was somebody slacking, the king would hear about it. So the governor, secretary, and general would all report not together. So that way the king got a good sense of what was really going on there in the provinces. Now, another way the king made sure that things were running smoothly is he hired a group of people that worked for him called the inspectors. They're called the nickname of them were the eyes and ears of the king. So what they would do is they would travel to different provinces to make sure taxes were accurately collected. So like none of the government officials were like pocketing money for themselves. And there were no rebellion plans from the people there. Now, the inspectors never warned the provincial officials that they were coming. They just showed up. And this made sure the provincial officials always did a good job. And I'm going to give you a comparison to life today that's kind of like this. So you may or may not know this, but restaurants get inspected by the health department. The health department doesn't tell the restaurant when they're coming. They just show up. And they check for safety violations and things like that. And the reason why they never say when they're coming is so that the restaurant always has to follow the rules. Because if they're not following the rules, it depends how severe. If it's like minor problems, what the health department would say is like, oh, I'll be back in 2 weeks, make sure this is fixed. If it's a major problem, like there's like rats running all loose or something gross, they immediately shut it down, and that's that until major things are fixed. So the inspectors in the ancient Persian Empire kind of do that same thing where they inspect the provinces, but the provincial officials have no warning that they're coming, so they always have to be following the rules and doing a good job. Judges would also travel to the provinces and make sure the laws were being followed. Now, in a Persian home,